What's going on, everybody? It's Garrett here for What is Smart. What is Smart is brought to you by
Thinkering Media, our brand new partner in humanizing education. We're excited to be sponsored and promoted by Thinkering Media and the work.
Welcome back to another episode of What is Smart, the show where we rethink intelligence learning and what it means to be wise in a world that's always changing. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Elizabeth Dean, an educator, leader, and researcher who spent over 15 years shaping what school could and should look like. And that's in our opinion. I'll say that by doing my homework. With a background in anthropology and American studies, 2 graduate degrees, and a dissertation rooted in student voice, it's our language around here, Elizabeth brings deep expertise and heart to every space she's in. Now at the Village School, a school right down my road, and if you don't think I'm going to visit, I'm going to visit. I'm going to literally show up at their door if the doctor doesn't let me in. She's exploring what happens when we let young people lead. Let's dive in. And What is Smart is sponsored by Thinkering Collective. 5 years, 10,000 projects, 20 million learners. The impact is real, friends. We're on the ground right now, working with educators across the world to do amazing things. Check out our Substack. Go to www.thinkeringcollective.org. It's all there, all the content, everything you need to start humanizing education today. All right, guys, today we have Dr. Elizabeth Dean. Doctor, welcome to What is Smart.
Thanks for having me.
I am so, I scrape, as well as the team in the background, we scrape the internet looking for folks like you. And it just so happens that you live down the road. So as we get started and we talk a little bit about your work, I'd love to hear the X-Men #1, if you will, the origin story of how you got into education.
Sure. So, they make you think and write a lot about your purpose and your why when you're in grad school. And I ironically went to a college where the largest degree was education, yet I did not major in it. I come from a long line of educators. My mother and all of her friends, a bunch of fierce women
Love
who
it.
raised me. They were all teachers, administrators, school counselors. And my entire childhood, they sent me one message, and that was, you have so many options. Please do anything but become a teacher. And so I did exactly what they told me not to do, and I became a teacher. Although I didn't come around to it until after I had graduated for college. I did a little stint as an event planner in the Washington, D.C. area, which was actually a really cool job. And I learned a lot about myself, but I found myself wanting to go back to school and become a teacher. I started out as an English teacher in a big high school right around the corner from where I am now. And I was surrounded by some really amazing educators. And I am so grateful for having my start down the hall, across the hall from some of the people that have really still influenced my educational philosophy today. My whole stance as a teacher was that I wanted to be a positive influence in the lives of young people because I had really amazing educational experiences as a Montessori student.
Yes.
Yes, I knew you would like that one. Actually, my most vivid memories from my entire pre-K through 12 experience are from Montessori school, which is interesting because I only went to Montessori for the first 2 years, like preschool, kindergarten. That's it. Then my mother worked in the public school system and she people placed me in her favorite school, which was not my neighborhood school, but I had some really great teachers there. I went to high school and just things fell kind of flat. And I just wanted to be a positive influence in the lives of my students. And I really was coming from a different lens. I think a lot of the teachers that I was working with became teachers because they loved school and had a great experience. And I was becoming a teacher because I didn't really love school the older I got. And I wanted something different for kids today. And I want something different for my own kids. This was before I had kids. So I just really wanted to be a positive influence. And I've taken that with me, which is really what brought me to my research on student voice, because they are the most important voices that we so often forget.
I think it's such a valuable perspective that we don't, as you mentioned, we don't really take into account in a child's learning journey, which is their view. there. I love, speaking of technology, I love things like Seesaw, because Seesaw for the first time was an app that gave kids the ability to document their own learning. And the outcomes, I implemented Seesaw in a lot of my programs and saw just like the coolest stuff when kids know you're not watching. Right. And open up in the classroom to the authentic view of, and yeah, there's silliness. Yeah, there's ridiculousness. But if you peel through that and you really know your kids as an educator, the context you can pull away from that is just so integral to the true competency, right? Not this like pretend meat grade outcome that we now focus on. And so you had mentioned one thing that stuck with me. One is you had talked about helping to shape your own philosophy around education. So you work for the Village School, which is a very innovative school, but what is your personal philosophy on education?
What a great question. I feel like my personal philosophy changes all the time
Love it.
because I'm just constantly, especially working here at the Village School, where we are really trusting young people to learn from their own experience. So I'm constantly, my opinion is constantly being pushed and changed and bent based on what I see just in the hallways and the studios here at school. But I think at the core of it, it's really, my educational philosophy is really grounded in that constructivist approach, and really like you said, was the competency met if the learner themselves doesn't think they met it? Or like what I mean, forget a rubric, like talk to the person in front of you. What did you learn? What are you putting on Seesaw? And it better be silly, because learning should be fun.
Oh,
So
preach.
yes. So I think really at the heart of it is just really personal, and really, I think, my educational philosophy is all about uncovering the individual story, the human story that's behind whatever rubric or paper that you're passing in.
I love that you like put the emphasis on how mundane the paper and because it is. I think we're talking about literally life at its fullest and most creative, right? Like
Yes.
we're at and our most attuned to learn. And we make this situation for kids that is so drastically not learning, right? It's this like cramming and throwing up philosophy that we continue to push in schools. And, even in the past, 4 to 8 years, seeing a rebirth of the kind of pushback with classical education, as if this system is so like, fundamental to saving our country, if you will. But the reality is it's folks like you that are doing really great work and pushing the needle forward, because the needle is really informed by learners. And if we're, and this is one of my big things, is like, if we're having these kind of what is smart, heady conversations, and we're on panels and we're answering questions, how the heck is that helping learners in the classroom in a system where, of course, teachers are overworked and underpaid, and of course, they don't want to invest their time into anything else or shifting a mindset? People have to see that and see on the ground, and more so the right people have to see the outcomes that you're shaping. And that kind of helps me to form my next question, which is, at the Village School, you guys talk about like walking beside learners. And so what does that look like in practice? Because I think that that's a real key to understanding that narrative competency that we're talking about.
Yeah. So walking beside learners really means that we're taking we're in it for the long game, the slow approach, right? Slow schooling maybe is one way to put it. There's some articles written about that, just really zooming out and focusing on what matters. And when you do that, when you get rid of all the extra stuff, extra standards, millions of competencies even, right? You can really walk alongside the learner. And we talk a lot about the word assessment, and that root word of assessment that actually means to sit beside. And most of our assessments today does not look like an adult or a mentor sitting beside a learner to discuss. It looks more like a big standardized test with like creaky chairs and a big gymnasium with no window. And so we really take that root word of assessment seriously. That's the nerdy English teacher in me.
I love it.
those root words. And we try to infuse reflection as often as possible because, these aren't new ideas. I mean, you could read John Dewey's work, which is like 100 years old, and he's saying the same thing. We're not really that great at listening yet, I guess. But really we talk about, what we try to do here at the Village School is what is so often the first thing to get cut in a traditional classroom. And it's not the teacher's fault. It's like the bell rings, or there's just so many things that we have to get through that, sitting down and reflecting doesn't really check any of the boxes off on our to-do list. And it can be hard. I was one of those teachers, like I let reflection in my class. That was obvious, we don't have time. The bell rang, half the kids are already out the door. But here we don't have bells at the Village School, and we can really preserve that time to reflect and to create an environment where the skill of reflection is able to be practiced and refined, because even for adults, reflecting is hard work. It's a lot of critical thinking. You have to think of something yourself, right? You can't really ask Google or Chat GPT to reflect for you. I mean, you could, but you're skipping it, right? They're not going to know what your own experience is. So
That's right.
sitting beside and walking beside learners is really taking the time to reflect. How'd you do? What are you proud of? I mean, these aren't, really crazy questions. Like you said, it's just simplifying. Like, what are you proud of? How and why are you proud of that? What do you want to work on more? What's your plan? What do you need from us? What do you need from the other adults in your life? What do you need from your friends? And just prioritizing that and really trying to listen to what each learner says. And I think that's the most exciting part for me and for our team here at the Village School of being an educator, is really walking that tightrope between honoring the learner and like knowing when to step in and give them that little push that they might need. And then knowing when to step back because they're about to really push themselves further than we ever could. So it's really fun to watch, but it takes patience, it takes biting your tongue, and it takes really listening to what they have to say, what they think.
I mean, everything that you just said is like exactly where I see a meaningful partnership with the most important in the collective of ensuring that learners go off into the future successful, which is the learner. And I think you nailed it. It's, why do we believe in our hearts that children or that adults deserve more respect than children? I mean, they're equal human beings to all of us. And we have to look at ourselves and leverage the wisdom, which we do have, which comes in time, to guide children in the appropriate directions that are driven by them. Dare you say that you're giving the children agency in the classroom? I just think and I love that you kind of come at it and like, these aren't hard conversations, but what I've experienced, unfortunately, is 100 years of mindset development, right, in the public school system has created this kind of, I always look at it, I'm fascinated with UFOs and science in general and unidentified aerial phenomenon, as they're now called. And there's so much science, there's so much, data that shows that there's something else out there, right? And people refuse to look at it. It's not public knowledge because there's this overwhelming stigma that's been put in place. I relate that. I know that's a weird relation, but very true in the sense of it's right there in front of people's faces, just like the education system and its failure is right on everyone's nose, including educators. But in order to go over that line, there's a fear there, right, of change. I always go back to everyone's, and I mean everyone's, reaction to change is always uninformed pessimism. So you're going to get that at scale. And I have to ask you, coming from a public school background, like being in a high school and working in different aspects of that, do you think that, and maybe it is an obvious question, but do you think that that helped shape your current role in a private school, creating innovative curriculum and aligning with partners that, of course, inform that as well, too? Do you feel yourself being even more kind of buck the system innovative because of your experience?
I think I have a lot more freedom to buck. Well, we create the system here.
Correct.
So, but just like it is in the more, conventional settings that I've worked in, even here, I think you personally, we have to take the time to reflect, because I think if you don't do that, then you do become a fish that doesn't see the water in which you swim, if that makes sense. I
Totally.
think that's why I feel so grateful to have been, just by luck, surrounded myself with these really passionate and innovative educators when I first had my first classroom and was teaching 9th and 11th grade English. I think I easily could have become a teacher that just swam through that water without even knowing it. But because I was surrounded by these really older, more experienced, wiser, some of them not older, actually, just really, really wise men that really saw that water and questioned it. Is it water? Is this the water we want? To really go with that metaphor. I think I wanted the change. I wanted to experience something different, which is what brought me to the village school, not only for my own children, but just as an educator, I was ready for a change. My job in the public system when I left was really to help teachers and schools do this innovative work. And I really had a lot of fun doing that. And I was just ready for my next great adventure. I wanted to see education from a different perspective. My kids were here at the village school before I was a part of it. So I would spend my day convincing educators that it was possible, because I would go home at night and see my kids and see that how they were thriving in a system that was different. So I still very much believe in public education, and I am really excited, especially here in Virginia, about some of the innovative work that's going on. I think it's the big systems really just make it a lot harder, as we all know, to innovate and change. It's not as easy. So anything that we can do here at the village school to help, inspire and facilitate even those little changes in a classroom here or there, we're game for that.
I love it. I love the attitude. And for us, we see success because we're the same way. We're like, I come from an outside private school. I didn't go to private school. In fact, quite the opposite. But, I've worked in private schools my entire career. And what I've found is of course, like folks like you and I, because we've done this work for so long, or recognized the issues, the water, if you will, in the conversation. We see the water, it seems like a mundane or obvious conversation to have with people. Like, yeah, I mean, you can't even look at someone and look at their report card and give a accurate reflection of who that child, like comparative to the next person that has the same GPA. Like, it's all just numbers, unfortunately. But I think the work really comes down to the research and how these programs like the Village School, how they are actually reflecting the competency of learners, and then creating that shared language, really understanding. And thankfully what we see, because Thinkering does work with Loudoun County Public Schools, is school systems are now getting to the point where the world is now mapping to these old set of standards and producing children that we know the numbers and the decline of things like literacy in schools. And we see that kids are being pushed through a system alongside teachers, because go back to what you were saying, I do think the system basically teaches teachers how to detach, if you will. Like, I think a teacher goes long enough and just wants a paycheck, just wants to go home and support their own family, just wants all of these things, they're going to fall right in line very quickly. But I think the people that do see the water still to this day are kind of, I did a Substack article on it, are kind of looked down upon or almost judged, in the sense of oh, look at Elizabeth and doing this innovative work. Well, who does she think she is? There is that kind of sense that we get. But I do know that going into schools, saying that we have, a model here with the Village School that reflects children far more successful into the future than the current model, that's where the shift starts to happen. So it's almost like this. We think about this a lot. It's like a bottom-up cultural movement, yes, coupled with a top-down, integrated with school system movement, public school system movement, that is really going to have to be the answer, and how we really land with schools. So I'm wondering your thought about it. What do you see in the next 5 to 10 years for our public school education and how it's delivered to kids in a realistic world?
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the things, around here at least, and I know it's not the landscape in much of the country, but our school districts serve so many learners. I mean, we're right here on the edge of Arlington and Fairfax County at the Village School. And Arlington is like 40,000 plus students. Fairfax is almost 200,000 students. I mean, these are huge systems that have the best interest of the learners that they serve in mind. It's
That's right.
a big ask to change and do something totally different. Huge lift. I mean, you have the teacher education piece and the parent education piece and the conflicting values of maybe the parents versus what the educators want and all of the above. I mean, it's a really big lever to pull. And I think anytime you're pushing against the status quo, it's going to push back really hard. And it's sometimes, I think there's like the best case scenarios for these little pockets of change to happen. And like you said, that almost like a grassroots movement. And I think we need to do a better job, all educators that are pushing for innovation, of doing that parent education piece, because really at the heart of it, what we all want is best for our kids, right? And so I think a lot of parents are not maybe like you and I that sit around and think a lot about educational philosophy. They just want to Google, they want to go to their kids to go to a good school and they trust the school. And that is totally fair. I think a missing piece of a lot of the educational innovation is bringing the parents along, because they have really loud voices. And in my experience, when the parents are aligned and understand, you can kind of see it click for a lot of them, especially when you ask them to reflect on their own school experience. Even the parents that, crushed school will recognize that they played a game and they maybe wasn't the most meaningful learning, and they might not have had a lot of joy. So I think we could do, a better job of bringing parents along. I know that's not answering your question, but I think
it
bottom
is.
up, like the grassroots movement is really where it's at. And I think the community-based experiences can really go a long way. I know, from my own research, it just takes one positive student voice experience to change someone's mindset and shift their mindset about how much young people are actually capable for, because the kind of accepted belief, especially with, I do a lot of work here with middle schoolers, is that middle school is horrible and the middle schoolers are horrible and they can't do anything, when really they can do so much. And so I think my hope is that there are just, over the next 10 years, especially with all this new technology and AI, that we can really leverage that to create more community-based, real, not artificial though, real experiences that will, change that community perspective and make that community school connection, because I think that's the sweet spot, and everybody always seems to feel really good. We often here have, our middle schoolers right now are working on a personal finance project, and we had about 8 financial analysts come in a couple weeks ago, and they were the kids had to meet with a financial planner to get feedback on their budgets. And
Wow.
those meetings, the middle schoolers walked away with some great feedback, but which I think often is the adults that came and shared their profession and their expertise, left the most changed, because they have one perception, they're probably remembering their own traumatic middle school experience, right? And nobody wants to go back and relive that, but they leave with having such a positive experience with a young person. And that's really what we need more of. And I think that is what has the capacity to really shift things, because, we need to bring the adults along, right? The kids are great.
Yeah, gosh, and contextually in the ways that people consume information now. I think that's another big issue is, we're blowing up parent emails and text messages when, have you ever seen like a classroom, and there's apps out there and stuff like that, like have a social media for their parents, and put information out in ways that, like, we all know that we're all addicted to this kind of 10 to 15 second scroll. It's like, why are we not delivering information in that way? We actually work with a few partners that develop an app called, oh my goodness, now I'm blanking on it. It's not Seesaw. I'll get it to you. But anyway, the concept of the app is it's Instagram stories for education. So it's like just documenting super quick about what's going on in the room and then relaying that to parents in transparency. I think if you can open up, like in my schools, we do that. We document everything for multiple purposes, but we share that information in real time to create that layer of transparency. We create that partnership as part of the integrated part of our school. I do see, of course, in public schools, there's diversity, socioeconomic diversity, availability of technology, all of that. But there are ways through outreach to, I think, connect parents to the school, which has always been, especially in public school, us versus them, right? It's teachers
Yes.
versus parents. And we have a philosophy, even at my schools, it's us with them.
Yes.
So it's a partnership. And going back to like what a assessment looks like I always think about, can this be a really like beautiful moment where we're sitting in a room together, we're watching these videos of your child's progress in class, looking at pictures, we're telling stories about, what your child's doing in school, and ultimately the learning that's going on there, so that, like you said, like a parent can walk away and feel like, oh, I actually know what's going on. Because
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like right now we give these 20-minute, everything's great, get out of my room. Here's a piece of paper with the letters on it. Get out of my room. And also get out of my room. So everybody's like, okay. And there's a knock at the door and you look and, oh my God, the next parent's here. And it becomes this kind of, cycle of uninformed pessimism in general. I was going to go back to ask you this, which I think is really important. You talked about joyful learning. So define that in the context of a learner at the Village School. Define what a joyful learning experience looks like.
At the Village School, we think joy plays a huge part in learning. Learning really is one of it comes naturally to us, right, as humans, and it should be joyful. It is joyful. Then we send people to school and we suck the joy out of it. It reminds me of a book somebody gave me when I was teaching high school English by Kelly Gallagher, who was kind of like a superstar in the secondary English world. And it was called Read-A-Side. And his whole premise was that we give kids books and then we like suck the joy out of reading a book, right? So he would write and speak about how to spread the joy of reading, not to, suck the joy out. So we kind of feel the same way here about learning. And, learning it's only joyful if you're at your challenge zone or if you're doing hard work, right? It's not joyful if you're just taking the easy road out. So we talk a lot about that with our learners as young as pre-K. So we don't save these big conversations for the 8th graders here, but it all throughout. We really focus on that growth mindset piece, how to know when you're right at the sweet spot of your challenge zone versus like if you're stuck and you really need some help. We talk a lot about what it means to be interdependent, like relying on yourself and each other as a part of a learning community. And I think just in the day-to-day, the community is what brings a lot of the joy to learning, right? Like everyone's on their own personal learning journey, but it's that we're cheering each other on together. That is the joyful part. And that the joyful part also can look like, showing up for your friend who's sitting next to you who just, is super stuck on some really hard algebra and they're having a bad day. But it can, we can come around them and cheer them on, be the best cheerleaders. So it's not necessarily, it doesn't maybe always look like kids, like a couple weeks ago, they were at a local aquarium dissecting fish, dissecting squids. And that was really joyful, although for some, not so much. But it was a joyful learning experience. It was novel. It was new. It was something they had never done before. Everybody walked away with a lot to talk about over the dinner table, which maybe wasn't a welcome conversation over the dinner table. But
That's
happened in
hilarious.
my house over the dinner table.
Yep.
It can also just really look like being a part of a community that really cares and is focused on what's in your best interest. And that feels really good. Ron Richart out of Harvard's Project Zero, who I really love his work and has followed
We have friends over there.
His work has brought me a lot of joy in my educational ventures, but he says that being a part of it feels good to be a part of a culture of thinking. And I think that is true for all of us, no matter how young or old. And that's a lot of what the, joyful learning looks like here, is just being a part of a community where you belong and you have agency to shape it how you want it.
I love that. Yeah, we work a little bit with Project Zero with Veronica Mansilla. She's one of the, she's such really everybody over there. You're like, yes. And that's actually that conversation I had. The most recent conversation I had with her was about 2 hours. And that's where it really came down to, we were talking a lot about these simple questions. What is work? What is purpose? And we'll get to the question in a second here.
Yes.
But I just think overall, what we're finding, even at Thinkering Collective, because we seek out folks like you and schools like you, is that more and more people are not just, as we had talked about before, sitting on panels, saying, oh, this is what we should do for education and the research. And there are actually people going, no, how do we actually, implement these new things, try new things within the school environment to understand if they're working or not working? And really what we're doing, I think, at scale is just adding more and more to teachers' lives in public schools and never taking anything away. And so we're just constantly building upon this ever, lying pressure that doesn't really need to exist. And that's why I go back to these conversations that seem so simple, is because you're like, yeah, of course, if you sat down and talked with a kid and gave that child mutual respect and the understanding that they're going to be who they're going to be, regardless of your, memorization and regurgitation, they're going to persevere and be who they be. And it's up to us to expose them to so many different things in an aquarium style way, right? Experiential and project-based and collaborative, so that they have the experience to say, even those kids that didn't like it now know they don't like it. You know what I mean? They can make informed decisions, which again, even if you look at society, it's like, how much of that is the problems in our country today is people not making informed decisions, And so I have to kind of go back as we wrap this up. I would talk with you literally all day, and I definitely think we should connect after this on some of the work that we're doing and definitely some of the work you're doing. We'd love to come out, and I'll say this on air, and shoot a piece on the school, because we do have a media arm that this goes out on, and would love to kind of learn a little bit more about the Village School and their work and see how we could potentially collaborate if you'd be open to that.
Yes. Come anytime.
I love it.
Visitors welcome all the time. You never know what's going to happen here. So be prepared. That's the fun.
That's the best part. Yeah. We love authentic learning environments.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the things that you had said, just in how you need to show up as an educator for your learners alongside and in partnership, it requires us, and this is just a comment, I think it requires us as educators to be better people, to be authentic. Kids are going to sniff you out if you're not. Instantly, like if you go in, and my favorite learning moments in classrooms when I go around the country and I do observations and provide insight is when a teacher totally bombs a lesson, but plays into it, right? Is honest and is like, nothing's landing, and they're looking at their learners and going, wow, that was really terrible, wasn't it? And everybody's like, yeah, it's those moments where it makes those classrooms real and makes those classrooms human. And if we can have more of those like open, transparent moments in classrooms, I think it's just better for everyone, because teachers have been defined in this role of like superhuman and expected to be as such. And parents have defined themselves in the role as like, you're working with my most prized and valuable thing, so I'm going to critique and criticize and judge the heck out of you. It's like we need to create this open humanness to then push forward a more humanized education. So I just wanted to make that comment as I was thinking about it as you had said that. But I will ask you, as we do, Doctor, and I'm going to call you Doctor now. It's not even going to be Dr. Dean. It's not going to be
I worked hard for that. Yeah.
As you should, right? I don't have a doctor. I have a report card that says 1.8 when I graduated from high school, because I had
one close to that too. Yeah. If I can do it, you can do it.
I love it. I love it. See, if the doctor can do it, we all can do it. If I can do it, we all can do it.
I failed an entire semester of college, still graduated on time, and went to GW twice. So anybody can do it.
Anyone, guys. And that's, and if there is that burning fire in your heart to get something done, but you're scared, do it.
Yes.
We need more of you. We need more of you. Trust me. The doctor knows. I know. My whole team knows. We just need more of you out there. I'm going to ask you the question we ask everyone on this show. And I love the answers because they're all different. And it goes back to those simplified questions. But based on your career and your experience and the learners and the teachers and everyone that you've worked with, I have to ask you, Dr. Dean, what is SMART?
SMART in today's world is knowing yourself. I think it goes back to what I said at the beginning. I think in today's world, in the future, the competitive advantage is going to be to know yourself. And that's
I, one, respect the absolute heck out of your concise answer. I've heard all kinds of answers, but self-awareness, my gosh, I can't even tell you guys. And that does come with a schooling system that we're kind of speaking to, right? Of understanding your learners, because they need guidance to help them understand who they are.
Yes.
Talk about middle school, going back to middle school where you're figuring it out. I
The
love
most
that
important
age.
place.
I love that age because there is this, Montessori even said it's this kind of age of like sense of justice, right? They need to know the boundaries. Like, give me these boundaries that I can, play in basically. And so that's why you get difficult kids, but it's only when you show them this kind of wall of respect of like, no, you will comply to my demands. You're going to get the worst pushback. You know what I
Yes.
mean? From that crew. But if you understand your audience, just like stand up, it's like if you understand your crowd, you're going to do phenomenally better than you would like just walking in and not knowing the group that you're speaking to. A lot of people refuse to know that group. So I know you and I both know that some of the best learning outcomes happen there as humans are shaped and sometimes for life at that age in the best ways. So that being said, I would love, because I know you do more work than just at the Village School, I would love for our viewers to know how they can find you on the interwebs.
Sure. They can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Elizabeth C. Dean, and they can find me here at the Village School website, has our contact info, and the invitation goes out to anyone. We love having visitors. The learners love to share about their school and give tours, and you really never know what you're going to get when you show up, which is part of the excitement. So
Gosh, I cannot wait to visit, guys. And just know that if we do this right, I'll have some great content coming back from the Village School. It's right down the road from me, so I'm really looking forward. It's awesome because in our area, I know you can relate, there's just all these great schools popping up. I'm interested in alpha education and that whole movement of like 2-hour AI. I would love to see how that is shaping up and what's going on in that world. We'll see if that comes down the road. I don't know if you've heard anything about that?
yeah. I mean, anybody else who's pushing back against the status quo, the more, the better. And we're excited to connect, with people that are thinking forwardly and taking action and bringing others along. So we need all the innovators, that we can get.
Yep, I agree. And you heard it from the pro, guys. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate you coming on the show today. Our viewers definitely appreciate you. Thank you for letting us know how we can get in contact with you. And friends, thank you so much for tuning in to What is Smart. We're back, season 3. So excited, bringing you folks just like Dr. Dean, doing amazing work in education. It's real. And it starts here, talking about a cultural shift and movement. This is where you guys, if you're hearing this and you feel like you want to be a part of something bigger, contact us over at Thinkering Collective. Again, I showed you how to get there at the beginning of the episode. Thank you, Dr. Dean. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with our audience?
Thank you. Keep learning and keep finding joy.